Mr. Prime Minister, we welcome your personal participation in today's open debate. We thank the Secretary General and briefers for their briefings. We consider the topic proposed by the Greek presidency to be relevant. Maritime security issues occupy an important place in the architecture of global stability and, of course, deserve the attention of responsible members of the international community. At the same time, it should be emphasized that most of the issues brought up for discussion in today's debate, transnational organized crime, arms trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking, illegal fishing of marine resources, do not fall within the competence of the Security Council and fall under the mandate of other UN bodies, primarily the UN Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice and the Third Committee of the UN General Assembly. All these are, of course, serious challenges, but they should be considered at specialized platforms that have the necessary expertise. In this regard, with regard to maritime security issues, the UN Security Council should focus on those aspects that directly threaten international peace and stability. This category, by the way, includes the risk of interruption of global supply chains, mentioned in the concept note of today's event. We note that actions aimed at creating artificial obstacles and threats to maritime trade have recently become more frequent. Its stability is important for all countries, and for small island states or coastal developing states in general, it is a matter of survival. These actions are being taken in furtherance of the so-called unilateral coercive measures, OPM, a favorite tool of Western countries, primarily members of the European Union, to impose their own, often very exotic, political attitudes and preferences on others. Peacekeeping operations are a priori illegal. Their use is contrary to international law. Therefore, the attempts of Western countries to justify their illegal actions at sea with references to the OPMs they themselves introduced contradict the maxim dating back to the times of Roman law: no one is allowed to benefit from his own violation. References to alleged attempts to circumvent peacekeeping operations are used to label ships as belonging to the so-called shadow fleet. The term has no international recognition, nor does it have a transparent international mechanism. The actions against civilian ships at sea are egregious and unprecedented. They are comparable only to piracy, with the only difference that NATO countries are trying on the role of pirates of the Baltic Sea. So, recently, the entire internet spread footage in which Estonian patrol ships are trying to seize a tanker sailing in international waters by force. The captain of the vessel was ordered in the form of an ultimatum to change course and proceed to Estonian territorial waters. Twice attempts were made to land the hijacking groups from a helicopter. When this did not work out, the boat of the Estonian Navy literally tried to ram the tanker. All this is under the pretext of fighting the shadow fleet that has no international legal basis. We emphasize that this is not the first such case. There were others. Such actions, even in territorial waters, would be a gross violation of the right of innocent passage, and in international waters, it would be an encroachment on freedom of navigation. These are the fundamental norms of customary international law, codified in the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. That is why the convention contains an exhaustive and very limited list of situations in which it is permissible to stop a ship under a false flag for inspection. Neither in this list nor in the convention as a whole, you will not find a single mention of the so-called shadow fleet. In this regard, we would like to remind the newly minted Pirates of the Baltic and their EU support group that stopping a vessel under any other pretext not directly named in the Convention is, by definition, a gross encroachment on the freedom of navigation, the right of innocent or transit passage. The unacceptable behavior of the EU countries, therefore, creates a dangerous precedent. If other states follow suit, global supply chains will be interrupted, and maritime trade will simply stop. The habitual use of NATO naval assets for such illegal actions is a direct path to military escalation and the creation of serious challenges to maritime security. Mr. President, another example of the actions of Western countries to undermine maritime security is the terrorist attack against two branches of the Nord Stream gas pipeline in the Baltic Sea in September 2022. This crime, committed in the exclusive economic zones of Denmark and Sweden and outside the zone of any armed conflict, entailed grave consequences in terms of the environment, energy, and safety of navigation. Despite the fact that almost 3 years have passed since the terrorist attack on Nord Stream, its organizers and perpetrators have still not been identified and brought to justice. The Russian Federation has repeatedly raised this issue in the Security Council and proposed agreeing on a product that would send an unequivocal signal about the need for a comprehensive investigation of what happened with the participation of all interested parties. However, all our initiatives were invariably blocked by the Western members of the Security Council, and Germany, Denmark, and Sweden deliberately cut our country off from the investigation. And the profound conclusion reached by the so-called investigators is that the gas pipelines, it turns out, were really blown up. This is the real price of today's statements by Western delegations about their alleged concern about maritime security issues. We believe that it is your actions, as well as inaction in the fight against impunity for specific crimes against cross-border underwater infrastructure that pose a direct threat to it. Thank you for your attention.